welcome to India Tonight. I'm Shibani Gharad and my colleague Jude Sanit is back to his base in Chennai and joining us from Chennai right there. You can see him smiling. But let's speak about what's happening in West Asia. Now, Iran has denied Trump's claims on negotiations after Trump claimed that US-Iran talks are expected to begin today. Iran's foreign ministry has said that there are no plans to receive a delegation or send an Iranian one. Meanwhile, Iran suggested negotiations with Oman, in fact, to get more ships moving through the Strait of Hormuz are, in fact, making progress. Now, my colleague Sumita is here with more details on this.
That's right. US President Donald Trump has reiterated that an agreement with Iran is imminent. He also said that peace talks are set to begin today. He said that there will be a deal on the Strait of Hormuz. Meanwhile, he's also called off a massive attack on Iran, which he said was after allies requested him to do so. And he said that these talks that both the sides, the United States and Iran, are going to hold, they will broach the subject of denuclearization of Iran. Meanwhile, the Iranian foreign ministry has said that they are not currently in talks with the United States, but what they have confirmed is that a new Hormuz route is now being discussed with Oman, and of course they say that these talks are essentially to establish a temporary route for vessels. They also say that this new route will be one path with entry and exit lanes. Meanwhile, once again, amping up the attacks on United States, Iran says that the U.S. has violated all of its commitments. It's reinstated the illegal maritime blockade. It has revoked the authorization for the sale of Iranian oil. And they also say that U.S. has declared almost all of the other commitments null and void. Remember, there were some commitments that were agreed upon between both the sides when the MOU between both the sides was agreed upon. And of course, a 60-day break or a 60-day ceasefire was to be maintained. However, that could not hold, and of course military tensions in the region remain high. But as far as these talks between Iran and the United States are concerned, well, markets are going to be watching very closely because oil prices fell after President Trump said that he was postponing military action. But of course, we've seen oil prices rising up and falling back again. And of course, volatility is something that's been one consistent theme as far as oil prices are concerned. So of course, that is going to be important from a market's point of view as well to track.
Thank you very much, Sumita, for that roundup and to discuss the situation as it develops and what it means for the West Asia region and the globe at large. I'm now joined by our expert panel. Ori Goldberg, political commentator, joins us from Israel. Rishi Gupta, meanwhile, Assistant Director at the Asia Society Policy Institute, also joins us, even as Manju Seth, former Indian ambassador, joins us on the show today. Thank you very much for joining us on India Tonight. Ori, if I could just start with you. Iran has flatly denied that President Trump's claims about there being renewed talks between both countries. Where does that leave where does this contradiction really take us or tell us about the current state of diplomatic affairs between the two countries?
It's not going to tell us much, and it's not going to change the situation much. That has remained the same despite the apparent fluctuations over the past 6 months. And the situation is that Iran has held the upper hand quite steadily over the time that has passed. And I see no change in that strategic principle. Iran can afford to be tough. It can't afford to be too tough because Trump can, at least at some point, get mad. But it can afford to hold true and remain steady. And I don't think we should take any specific development as indicative of whatever the future holds. I think we should play it on a day-by-day basis. Trump is undoubtedly doing exactly that. So are the Iranians, even though they seem to have a strategic plan in mind. And we should see what happens, not after one day, but after 1 week. If there are talks, even if they are indirect and that delegation is not received, it doesn't matter much. What matters is that there are steady communications, that no one is dragged into initiating an impulsive attack. And so far, both sides seem to recognize the strategic balance in the field.
Right, right. Let's go over to you, ma'am. Manju Sheth, as an ambassador, as a former ambassador, help us understand. And, you know, sometime back it was flashing on our screen as well. Perimeters of the deal agreed upon. So what specific perimeters of the deal is, President Trump claiming to have agreed on? And why is Iran denying it now?
I think the whole debate's been unfolding since the war. We have seen how there has been a lot of back and forth, and each side claiming a different sort of perimeters for what has been agreed to. And now the president has said the perimeters have been agreed to, but what exactly? Both sides are not talking about or mentioning the same perimeters or the same factors. But of course, the main items that need to be agreed on and to be finalized is, of course, to end this war and open the Strait of Hormuz. And Iran is very clear that it wants a peaceful nuclear program to continue. And I think, now it has the upper hand because the choke point of the Hormuz has become its strength, its leverage, and it's not going to give it up easily. And it's talking to Oman. It says Oman and Iran are talking of how to further increase their control and get some kind of money out of it and charge ships for going through that strategic strait. But at the same time, there is also the other countries which are trying to now look at alternative routes and to bypass the Hormuz Strait. And I think this fact that Tehran and Oman, etc., are trying to finalize a kind of charge or a levy on all ships passing and to decide who will go through and who will not go through, it might be counterproductive in the long term. But I don't know how it's going to pan out. But right now, I think it's important for Iran to also know this. It has a leverage, it has the upper hand, but it has to understand that overall, the rest of the countries in the South, in West Asia, are all impacted by what is happening. Even the US is impacted, but Iran itself is in a sorry state. So I think all of them, both sides have to negotiate.
Right. Manju, I'm glad you bring up the impact, element that is being felt by the region, including the United States. And if I could just get Rishi in on this aspect of the conversation. Rishi, the fact that, the US is saying that it has held back on fresh strikes on Iran at the behest of the country's, allies in the Gulf region. What does that tell you really about, the Gulf neighborhoods, what one might seem to be, or what might perceive to be, almost a universal push towards de-escalation? Is that necessarily what is happening, given the fact that there seems to be some sort of pressure or some push on the US to actually hold back on strikes? Does the West Asian neighborhood now want to, collectively de-escalate the situation? Rishi.
Thank you so much. I would say it's been around half a dozen times that President Trump has claimed victory over Iran, and that speaks volume. And I would say let me put up my first word, that is, there is an entire gap of communication between the two countries. From what we see today is that President Trump has one version that the allies have asked him to hold on to hold the strikes. At the same time, Iranian side's version is that it is let the sides live in the gloom. So in that way, I would say there is an entire gap of communication, and I think what Saudi Arabia is saying, let the diplomacy take over. Second, I would say the impact of since February, we have seen that the economic impact has been so drastic that even the allies need to rebuild whatever is being lost. And I think it is now high time that allies come together. Obviously, the war cannot be stopped, certainly unless Iran and United States do not come together. But at the same time, I think allies have a role to play because they are also at the receiving end. In that way, I think it is very much required that the two sides come to the talking table. How they will come, that's very unsure, that's very not sure, and that's very uncertain as well. I think the second point I would want to make is Iran still holds the upper hand, and that is reflected from, if you see some of the reports that have come up today and yesterday, that the CENTCOM, Central Command, has asked its soldiers and strategists to come up with some unconventional and some creative ways to deal with Iran crisis. That means the military option is no more the only option. And I think in that way, there is a gap, there is a communication gap, there is a time that the allies as well as United States needs to rebuild itself, to strike against Iran. In that sense, I would say it's a matter of time. There is no certainty that something tangible or very substantive will come out of these conversations, but it's time to wait and watch.
Go over to Mr. Ori Goldberg again. And, there is, of course, the denying that has come in from Iran of holding any conversation with the United States. But they've agreed to be in conversation with Oman. Now, after the Trump claim, in fact, that there is going to be like a conversation and there are going to be talks with Iran, the oil markets have reacted pretty well, but help us understand what is the overall impact of, even the conversation with Iran. What is the kind of reaction that you're gauging in the region, and will, these talks for an alternate with Oman satisfy, so to speak, the shipping companies, because of the spiking insurance rates that, these shipping companies have seen? What is the reaction of that region right now?
I would simply say that there has been a tremendous loss of faith in the United States' ability to act as the grown-up in charge of events in the region, both economic and strategic. Oil companies and local leaderships are looking for alternative candidates, and Iran seems to be able and willing to, as the Americans say, step up to the plate. Iran is not wholly accepted. It's still quite clear that there is a battle of factions inside Iran. It's still quite clear that Iran represents a position that can generally be defined by regional powers as hardline. But given that, and that's not saying much these days, it's also very clear that Iran represents an option for a voice for stability, an option for at least midterm certainty that the United States cannot supply. I'm not even talking about Israel, which is completely out of the game. So I think markets are responding well, oil and insurance companies are responding well, and they're doing so because it seems like for the umpteenth time, everybody's had enough of this war, except that this time Donald Trump himself seems to be very much fatigued, not prepared to go on with this, very much needing and hoping to devote most of his strength to the midterm elections coming up in November. This war is completely useless. The Israeli agenda, which seemed to guide this war, is completely useless. And I am optimistic cautiously because I think that finally this message is sinking. This war should not be fought according to American and Israeli standards. It should be fought according to regional standards, even if those include Iranian standards.
Right, regional standards that you feel, Ori, will determine the course of this war and the way it ought to be fought and eventually, hopefully, settled, bringing peace back to the region. But Ms. Sheth, if I could come back to you for a bit, Ms. Manju Sheth, the fact is that even as we speak, and even if talks do eventually begin, if you could just help our viewers understand and bring some perspective to it, what do you think could perhaps be the key sticking points between Washington and Tehran that could possibly run the risk of derailing these talks once again and all of us going back to square one? Are there risks involved, and what could these sticking points be, Ms. Manju Sheth?
Absolutely. We have seen that how there have been, after the broad framework was also agreed and under the MOU, even after that, there was, both sides went back and, some attacks on ships. So I think the sticking points will, of course, be getting the Hormuz Strait to be fully reopened. And as it was before the February 28th war, I think that will be a major problem because right now Iran and Oman are in talks, as has been reported, but Iran would like to control now because it finds that that's where its leverage lies. So it will look at not moving too much out of its position that it will charge something and it will regulate the flow of traffic through the Strait of Hormuz. And the second thing would be the other sticking point that could possibly be there is the nuclear program, which continues to be, has been a sticking point and continues to be a sticking point, and especially the nuclear material, the enriched uranium that is already with Iran, that will also be a possible sticking point because Iran is not ready to give up its nuclear option. And though it says it's for peaceful purposes, but it is not ready to give that up. And especially in the light, I think, also the Saudi talks that have taken place, Saudi agreement with the US regarding a peaceful nuclear energy program. It's not been agreed to yet, but at least there's some movement in that direction. So I think that will be another cause for concern and a sticking point between the talks. And of course, to ensure that this war ends on the terms of each side. Iran has its red lines, the US has its red lines, but of course the US is fatigued and it's continuing trying to do psychological warfare or warfare by other means. But I think it is also fatigued, it is also tired. Iran also would like an end to it, but on its own terms. So I think there will be much more negotiations involved, and it's going to be a long process. I don't see an early end to it. But hopefully better sense will prevail because, as I said, all others are impacted in the region, all other regions. And Iran itself is beginning to feel the pressure. And I think there will be some movement, but not very soon, not in the very near future.
Right. Let's go over to you, Mr. Rishi Gupta, and let's move away from region to United States. Of course, Trump administration has faced a lot of backlash domestically for the duration of the war since it began in the month of February. Now, what political leverage, does Trump administration or Trump gain domestically after saying that imminent talks are underway right after calling off the strikes?
Thank you. I mean, the big question is that does Trump enjoy the same leverage that he had when he, won the election second time? I think that's a very doubtful answer, I would say, in many ways, because from the recent polls, it is very clear that the war has dented his political spectrum. At the same time, midterm elections are coming. So in that sense, I think it might impact the Republican side in many ways. But I think the major point, the sticking point here is how Trump plans to navigate it domestically. Look, in the entire history, I would say in the recent history of the United States, no war has received applause. There have been divided perspectives in that sense. So even be it in Iran, be it Iraq, be it Afghanistan, I think end of the day, what people want is a peaceful United States, a peaceful region, and no war. From an angle that when President Trump had come to power, he had promised that he's going to be the peace ambassador. But unfortunately, that has not happened. He claims that he has tried stopping multiple wars, and maybe he has also claimed a lot of victories in that sense, and that's how the Nobel Peace Prize claim. At the same time, I would say it remains to the people of the United States, and also the not just the people of the United States. I would say regional countries also, have a lot of stake in understanding where this leads to. There is entire uncertainty whether this upcoming or if there are any future talks going to happen, because there is there is a lot of confusion whether this talk will lead to any conclusion. In many ways, I would say domestically, it is a tough terrain for the Trump administration, and also a lot of answers before the next elections come up.
Right. So I'm guessing it's a good time to ask Ori this. Ori, if you could help us understand, what should the world be watching over the next few days or weeks to judge as to whether, the situation as it presents itself today is heading towards diplomacy, or if we should perhaps be bracing for yet another round of confrontation? What are the signs to be watching out for, Ori?
Well, I'd have to stick my 2 Israeli cents in, despite what I said previously. I think further isolation and removal of Israel from the discussions is a good sign, because Israel is now the only party to this conflict that is actively seeking war. And if Israel is sidelined by the United States, that means the United States is stepping away from war. I think that any kind of diplomatic talks, be it by proxy, be it Iranians and Omanis, be it Americans and Saudis or Emiratis, any kind of diplomatic talks that go on for more than a day or for longer than it takes President Trump to tweet about them on Truth Social would prove to be a good sign. And generally speaking, I think now is the time to look for even a modicum of longevity. Any kind of initiative that manages to carry over the length of a few days, any situation where we don't get exposed to the man who has laughingly become known as Taco Tuesday Trump, I think that would prove to be a good sign, because what we're looking for now is the proven ability and political courage required to carry such an agreement over a sustainability threshold. That is not a scientific discussion. It's not based on the number of centrifuges Iran holds. It's based on the political will to carry this to completion. And by the way, another sign would be some more developments on the Gaza front and the ability to enforce the Peace Commission's initiative for Gaza that would also signify a behind-the-scenes commitment of local Gulf leaderships for peace and stability.
Manju Shade, I'm coming to you for this, I just want to ask you one simple question. Is this war reaching that never-ending, that forever endless war state at this point in time? Because the conflict has been going on for so many months now. Is it that protracted war, as it's called, where, there is no conclusion and the conflict is never-ending?
Certainly, I don't think it's going to end very soon. But yes, both sides would like, and all the rest of the world would like to see that this war ends at the earliest. But for the moment, I foresee that this will continue for some time. And of course, but the US and President Trump are really now wanting to withdraw. But they want an honorable exit. And as would Iran. Both Iran also wants an honorable exit. You can see there's some fatigue on both sides, but both sides are digging their heels in. And I think because of that, it will take some more time for the dialogue or diplomacy to be successful. But it is going to continue for some time, I believe. It will be a protracted war for some time.
Does not, turn out to be as protracted as some of us think it might be, at least in the interest of peace, not just in the West Asian neighborhood, but across the world. But on that note, Ori, Rishi, Ms. Manju Sheth, thank you so much for joining us on the show tonight with your perspective and your insight on the developing situation in West Asia. We'll be back with you soon to continue discussions as the situation progresses. But thank you so very much for joining us on the show today. Meanwhile, let's take a look at how Wall Street has been doing at this time and place. In fact, the Dow Jones Industrial Average has jumped about 1.3%, while the S&P 500 has gained 0.9%, and the Nasdaq Composite on its part has also advanced to about 1.2%. In fact, by and large, stocks have been rallying ever since US President Donald Trump announced that he was in fact putting a pause on those pre-planned strikes on Iran, thereby easing geopolitical tensions and sending oil prices much lower. In fact, communication services and software stocks have led the gains largely on the street, even as the Nasdaq, with Meta as well, surging more than 6%. So it's been good news by and large on the street, especially in the context of the US planning to lay off those strikes that they planned on Iran itself. Meanwhile, Treasury yields also slipped as easing oil prices have helped temper inflation concerns. The benchmark 10-year Treasury yield, in fact, fell 7 basis points to around 4.67%. Shabani, crude's been doing rather well, and that's good news, no doubt, especially in these uncertain times in the context of energy. Take us through what's been like on
At one point in time, Jude, it was hitting above $100 a barrel. Now, crude prices have fallen due to the latest geopolitical developments, and my colleague, in fact, Merrill, is bringing us more details on this.
That's right. We have seen crude prices take a sharp hit, with both global benchmarks seeing sharp cuts across the board. Brent crude is down nearly 5% right now, and WTI crude has also slipped upwards of 6%. And back home as well, we're seeing MCX crude futures have also fallen to a nearly 3-week low. Well, Wall Street as well has reacted to this, with the street seeing a firm positive opening in the first few minutes, and soon all major indices are now open to upwards of 1% of gains, as easing geopolitical tensions and also the hopes of softer inflation have played through and brought about optimism in the market. Investor confidence has also gotten a lift, as New York Fed President John Williams says he expects inflation to continue easing, which is now reinforcing expectations that price pressures remain on a more of a moderating path. Another big trigger, of course, is the Brent crude falling. And this has also seen the 2-year US Treasury yield easing, which is signaling lower inflation expectations and also supporting equity markets. Among stocks in focus, Amazon has surged nearly 5%, taking its total market cap to upwards of $3 trillion, making it one of the world's most valued companies at this moment. So we're seeing a cascading effect from the easing of crude prices, which is now playing into heavy optimism for all global markets right now as we speak.
Optimism, don't they, Meryl? Thank you so much for joining us with that update on what crude's like at the moment. Moving on, in an exclusive conversation with ET Now, Jonathan Barrett, that's the CIO of the ETO Group, spoke about the impact of the West Asia crisis on oil prices. He also mentioned that OPEC has excess capacity and will continue to increase output. Let's listen in to that slice of that conversation.
Hello and a warm welcome. You've joined us on Commodity Central right here on ET Now. I'm Ashesha Advaryu, and today on the show we're going to put the spotlight on the oil market, thanks to the kind of volatility that we've seen over the last few days, especially on the back of West Asia crisis. So where is the oil market headed? To discuss that in greater detail, we are now joined by Jonathan Barrett, who is now joining us. Jonathan, thank you for taking your time out and joining us here on ET Now. And let's start by talking about the kind of moves that we are seeing in the oil market. It is now sub that $85 a barrel mark. It is down nearly 7% in trade today after rising a tad bit on Friday. Where do you see the oil market headed, at least in the near term, given that the volatility perhaps is likely to persist, at least in the near future?
I think I think that's a very good question, because we have seen a lot of volatility in the market. I do get a sense that Donald Trump is saying one thing and Iran is saying the other thing. Iran has just come out and said they're not really in discussions with the US, and there've got to be some immediate effects happening in Israel in terms of what's happening with Palestine. So I do get a sense that there's a lot of talk, but not a lot of action, although the market likes to see the fact that Trump's saying that they've got an agreement. That seems to be placating the market, and as a result of that, oil is coming lower. Let's hope it continues.
Is the bull case and the bear case scenario that you're working with when it comes to oil prices? How much lower can it drift from current level, assuming that the West Asia crisis settles down in the near future? And on the other hand, on the flip side, what is the upside scenario that you're working with when it comes to oil prices?
Yeah, on the downside, I think we were already around US $70 a barrel. I think from there it can spend some time. It does concern me that we've got inflationary aspects occurring, and from a monetary policy standpoint, interest rates might start to move up, which will further depress the price of oil. As a result of that, if we can resolve the situation in the Middle East, then I think oil should go sub 70. It's in nobody's interest to have oil above these levels, and that's across the entire globe. So I do think that if Iran can come to the table, if the US can say what they say, then prices will go lower. I don't think that really no one wants to see it higher. But obviously, if we get the Red Sea happening, the Straits of Hormuz occurring, and we don't get any conflict there, or the conflict continues there, then prices could escalate up to that 100 again. But it's in nobody's interest to see at that level, so I'm favouring the downside.
The situation worsens, then probably we could see Brent crude prices crossing that $100 a barrel mark yet again. That's the word coming in. Jonathan, let's also talk about the OPEC Plus decision that came in yesterday evening, where the oil cartel decided to increase output by about 588,000 barrels a day with effect from September. And this is the 6th consecutive month of price hike that the cartel has undertaken. How do you read the action that was taken by OPEC Plus yesterday and the kind of course and the trajectory the group is likely to take in the coming months?
I think it's a very positive thing, and I think it's for OPEC to come out and do that and increase supply at a time that depresses that market. That's why I think it's sort of seen up around that US $100 for Brent. I think you won't see it spend a lot of time up there. OPEC, who have that excess capacity, will continue to increase output, of course they can, and at these prices it makes sense for them to do it. So I think it's responsible by OPEC to do that. That'll soften the market where if the crisis does start to develop, even more so. But at the end of the day, I think it's a responsible thing, and I think OPEC will continue to be responsible and increase supply if situation becomes worse.
Jonathan, in light of everything that is happening in the West Asia crisis front and the fact that if the crisis were to resolve in the near future, we will probably see higher supply of oil in the global market. Coupled with that, if the OPEC Plus is increasing supply in the global market, do you think excess supply could actually push prices much lower than feared?
I think this is a real genuine fear that could occur. But that's going to be in bed with what happens in the macro side and what happens with inflationary pressures starting to cook. Remember, we've just had massive amounts of intervention in the yen. Remember that Japan is a 100% importer of oil. There are inflationary concerns that might start to evolve. And as a result of that, I think if you do see a resolve here, interest rates higher, we don't need that amount of oil, therefore prices could come significantly lower. But that's a day-by-day event. But the macros at the moment aren't pointing to that. But yes, 70 is the balance. But I do think that given where OPEC is, given where the market is, there is potential for it to head lower than 70, perhaps even entangling that US $60 a barrel.
And if at all the oil prices or the oil market were to remain sluggish for some more time, and if oil prices were to fall below $70 and $60 a barrel, what kind of action do you expect OPEC Plus to then take in that case?
Oh, I think they'll just hold off. They'll turn around and they'll do what they normally do and what they do best. Remember, OPEC is there to balance the supply and demand. That's what they say. And I think you'll find that if that's the case, they'll just come off the boil in terms of the rhetoric we've seen at the last couple of meetings. So if anything there, sit back and say, well, okay, we don't want to see demand destruction occurring. We just want to see an orderly market.
Correct. And what are the two biggest triggers that you will watch out for the oil market for the next few months? One, of course, has to be geopolitics. But other than that, assuming that it remains status quo, what are the other factors that you will keep an eye out on to track the commodity market?
I'll be keeping an eye on what the Fed do. We still have that inflation, sticky inflation in the States. And I see exactly if they sort of move to more of a hawkish stage on that, then that'll depress the market a little bit more. So I'm really trying to get a better handle on what the Fed is looking on interest rates. And once I get that, then I can see a clear direction in terms of supply and demand for oil.
Okay, Jonathan, thank you so much for taking your time out and joining us here on ET Now and sharing your thoughts, especially on a day like this when Brent crude prices have corrected nearly 6 to 7%. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, it's a wrap on this edition. Thanks so much for tuning in.
Now, Centre has raised windfall taxes on exports of diesel and aviation fuel as global oil prices continue to remain volatile. Kuldeep gets us more details on this.
Well, the government has revised windfall gain tax on exports of petrol, diesel and aviation turbine fuel for the fortnight effective 1st of August. The export duty on petrol has been increased to 3.5 rupees per litre, while the export duty on diesel has been increased to 25.5 rupees per litre, and this also include RIC of 1.5 5 rupees per litre. The export duty on aviation turbine fuel has been increased to rupees 22 per litre. Well, we must tell viewers here that the government introduced windfall gain tax on petroleum products on 27th of the March to ensure domestic availability of petroleum products in the backdrop of West Asia crisis. Now, the government revises these duties on every fortnight.
On that note, we'll slip into a really short break, but in yet tonight, we'll be back on the other side in a jiffy, so keep watching ET Now.
Welcome back. You're watching India Tonight. I'm Shubhani Garat, and joining us is my colleague Jude Sanit. Now, Jude, Meta officials were grilled by the members of the Parliament Standing Committee on IT. Now, as per chairman of the panel, parliamentary panel has sought accountability on the removal of PM Modi's video from Facebook. In fact, Kuldeep is getting us more details on this.
Well, Parliamentary Standing Committee on Communications and Information Technology has taken tough stance on removal of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's video from Facebook, and in fact, it sought accountability from Meta officials. The committee held a 3-hour-long meeting today at Parliament House and Annex building, and during the meeting, the officials from, in fact, the Home Secretary as well as officials from the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology and senior representatives from the social and digital platforms like Meta, X, Google and Snapchat were present. During the meeting, in fact, the representatives of Meta, they apologized for the removal of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's video from Facebook. However, the committee members stated that it's not about apology and accountability must be fixed, and the action should be taken against the officials responsible for the removal of Prime Minister's video. Well, we must tell viewers here that last week Prime Minister Narendra Modi had posted a video on Facebook giving the details of actions taken against examination paper leaks. However, the video was removed from Facebook platform for nearly over 3 hours as per the committee members. In fact, committee chairperson Nishikant Dubey, who is also BJP member of parliament, said that the video was removed for over 5 hours from the Facebook platform. Following that, in fact, Meta had stated that it was due to a technical error and had apologized for that. But now, in fact, the chairperson of the committee, Nishikant Dubey, has also stated that the apology should come from Mark Zuckerberg himself, and in case of non-compliance, he also stated that the safe harbor protection should be withdrawn. Additionally, the committee also held a discussion on the child abuse sexual materials on social and digital platforms, and committee members advocated for stringent laws on the matter. During the meeting, the opposition members who are part of the committee, they also stated that the content which is against or critical to the government should not be treated as anti-national. Well, today the committee heard views from statements from the senior officials from Home Ministry as well as Electronics Ministry and from the representatives of social and digital platforms. The agenda of the meeting was social and digital platforms and their regulations.
Well, it looks like that face-off between the centre and Meta is all set to continue. But moving on, let's take a look at how Indian markets fared today. The Nifty ended the session well above the 24,750 mark, even as the index rose 1.5%, with the majority of sectors ending in the green. In fact, broader markets outperformed today, with the standout performer being the IT sector, even as a majority of the sectors, like I mentioned, also ended in the green. Grasim and TCS were the two top outperformers today, and my colleague Snehi is here for more information on just how the markets were all day long.
Well, yes, it's been a stellar start to the week because it's been a wonderful Monday for the street. You've seen a very good uptick coming in on the Nifty to the tune of 1.6%, 24,774. Thereabouts is where we've shut shop for the day. It's an uptick of almost 400 points on the spot basis for Nifty, so very good show coming in over there. Sensex too higher by 550 points or close to 0.7%. Nifty Bank has done well for itself. It's a 1.5% uptick over there, but what's also looking very robust is the breadth of the market that has been really positive.
positive, because if you take a look at the Nifty mid-cap index, that was higher by 1.25%, as was the case for the Nifty small cap as well. So good show coming in across the board. Now, we had a lot of factors that were at play. You had crude cooling off that did wonders for an interglobe aviation. Paint companies were doing well, as was the case with rubber-related companies. You had Jubilant Foodworks that was also doing well, up about 7% in trade. So good move coming in on the crude front. On the flip side, if I take a look at what the sectoral performance has been, IT has been the winner through and through. An intraday uptick of 3.25% on that index, with names like LTM, TCS, Infosys, Emphasis, all of them participating in this rally with gains between 4 and 7% each, followed by Nifty Bank, FMCG, Metal, Auto, Finance, PSU Bank, Realty. While we're speaking of the FMCG index, the gains were led by ITC. Good show in terms of what the stock has done, despite the numbers being weaker than estimates, but brokerages have upgraded the stock and they believe the worst is behind for the stock, which is why ITC has done well. On the flip side, you've got Nifty Media. That was the only index that shut shop in the green on account of a massive fall in Z Entertainment, because its promoters have been banned from participating in the securities market for 2 months. Pharma, energy, oil and gas were some of the least gaining sectors in trade. Now, if I take a look at the broader end of the market, the breadth was absolutely in favor of the advances. 380 stocks in the green with 120 stocks in the red. That's what the advance decline ratio tilt looked like. Urban Company tops 500 Nifty 500 gainer, almost a 13% uptick on very strong Q1 earnings, followed by Balrampur Chini, Pine Labs, Aegis Logistics, Reddington, LTM. You've got one MobiKwik that did well as well in terms of earnings. On the flip side, joining Z Entertainment in the red is Muthoot Finance on weak set of numbers, lower by about 7.25%. Blue Jet Healthcare, Latent Few, Narayana Health, CG Power, Thermax. Most of these are earnings candidates, with brokerages also giving these stocks a thumbs down. So all in all, that sums up the kind of day that we've seen. Lots of stocks in focus on the back of earnings, brokerage reactions. You had GAIL that was under pressure on the back of multiple downgrades also coming in. So these are some stocks to watch out for as well in terms of how they react on Tuesday. But all in all, it's been a wonderful day of trade for Monday and a very strong start to the week.
Ncube Ethicals has filed its draft papers with SEBI for a proposed IPO of up to 3,000 crore. The issue will be entirely an offer for sale by existing shareholders, including founder Mehul Shah and Frontier Investment Holdings. The pharmaceutical formulations company is promoted by Mehul Shah, who, along with the promoter group, holds an 80.6% stake, while Singapore-based Quadria Capital-backed Frontier Investment owns about 15%. We have Anurag Joshi with more details on this.
Ncube Ethicals, a pharmaceuticals formulation firm, has filed its draft offer document for a proposed initial public offering. The company is planning an IPO of 3,000 crore rupees. The IPO will be planned sale of shares by the key shareholders of the company, founder Mehul Shah and Frontier Investment Holdings. Both of them are offloading some of their equity stake in the IPO. The book-running lead managers for the IPO are JM Financial, Access Capital and Kotak Investment Banking. The promoter group led by Shah owns an about 81% equity stake in the company. Frontier Investment owns an about 15% equity stake in the company. Frontier Investment is controlled by Singapore-based Quadria Capital, which is the sponsor of the fund. Now, sources had told ET Now earlier, and we had reported this earlier, that before the IPO plan, the company was in talks with certain private equity players for an equity sale. And the possible suitors at that time had included Advent International, EQT and Warburg Pincus. But Ncube started working on the IPO plan following the collapse of deal talks with the PE fund and has now filed the DRHP with SEBI.
Moving on to some legal action next, United Spirits has moved the Bombay High Court against an FSSAI order pertaining to packaging labels at its Baramati unit. In fact, the company maintains that these labels comply with all regulatory and legal standards that prevail and says the issue is more of an industry-wide concern. Now, meanwhile, the FSSAI has alleged that select liquor products, including those of United Spirits, have used flavoring substances in violation of prescribed food safety norms. My colleague Akansha joins us with the latest from the development.
Legal battle has broken out between United Spirits and the food regulator FSSAI. United Spirits has moved the Bombay High Court challenging an FSSAI order related to one of its products manufactured at its Baramati unit. Talking about the issue, FSSAI has barred the sale of select liquor products made by United Spirits, Inbrew Beverages and Mohan Rocky Spring Water breweries. In fact, the regulator alleges that these products use artificial or nature-identical flavoring substances which violate food safety norms. According to FSSAI, adding whiskey flavor to whiskey or rum flavor to rum is not permitted under the prescribed standards. So the regulator says these products therefore do not conform to the Food Safety and Standards Act. However, on the other side, United Spirits has strongly disputed the order. The company says its product labels fully comply with the existing legal and regulatory framework and are in line with long-standing industry practice. In fact, the company has also termed this an industry-wide issue, saying the matter is being taken up with FSSAI through industry bodies CIBC and ISWAI. Importantly, United Spirits says the order has no material operation or financial impact on the company at this stage. So for now, the issue remains under judicial consideration, and the Bombay High Court's decision will likely determine how these food safety standards are applied to the liquor industry going forward.
Now on to an ET Now exclusive. Specialty chemical maker Anupam Rasayan has raised a 1,600 crore NSD issue to finance its acquisition of pharma firm Bliss GVS Pharma. The bond sale was arranged by Investec. Sources inform ET Now. Anurag Joshi joins us with more details on this as well.
Specialty chemicals maker Anupam Rasayan has raised 1,600 crore rupees through the sale of 3-year non-convertible debentures to fund the acquisition of pharmaceutical company Bliss GVS Pharma. The bond sale finances the acquisition of up to 74.2% equity stake in Bliss GVS Pharma. Investec was the sole arranger for the NCD issue, and the proposed purchase of as much of 48.2% equity stake plus 26% open offer to the holders by Anupam will be financed through the bond deal. Anupam plans to buy 45.8 million shares of Bliss GVS at 299 rupees a share. Investec, the sole arranger on the bond deal, is marketing the notes in the broader debt market. Earlier in 2026, Anupam had raised about $115 million through a term loan from Oaktree Capital Management. Oaktree's financing was used to fund the acquisition of US-based Jaywalk Fine Chemicals Corporation. That transaction closed in February, and the Jaywalk deal was closed at a price of $150 million. Anupam at that time had acquired a 100% stake in Jaywalk, which is based in Kansas, for $150 million. Jaywalk's offerings are advanced intermediates, active ingredients, and also high-performance materials.
Moving on, it's a confirmation of just what ET Now has been reporting over the last few days. FCNRB deposits have in fact surged under the RBI's special swap window, with outstanding balances nearly doubling to $60.6 billion in under 2 months. Fresh mobilization has crossed $36.7 billion, providing strong support to forex reserves and rupee liquidity. Akansha is back with us with more details.
That's right. The RBI special measure to attract foreign currency continue to receive a strong response, with FCNRB deposits touching fresh highs. As of July 30, outstanding FCNRB deposits have risen to $60.55 billion, up from $32.56 billion on 5th of June, which means that banks have added nearly $28 billion in less than 2 months. Now, if we take a look at the fresh mobilization under the RBI's special swap facility, FCNRB deposits stood at $36.73 billion as of July 31st. Now, overall total mobilization under the RBI special swap facility has reached $40.82 billion, which highlights the strong response that the scheme is getting, which is being taken by central bank. Now, talking about the top contributors to this scheme, SBI continues to lead with FCNRB outstanding deposits of $13.82 billion. Among private sector banks, ICICI Bank tops the list with $6.06 billion, followed by HDFC Bank at $5.42 billion. On the other hand, if we see among foreign banks, HSBC has emerged as the leader with FCNRB outstanding deposits jumping to $6.26 billion. If you look at the broader trend, public sector banks' FCNRB deposits have increased to $25.59 billion from $16.75 billion, while private sector banks have seen their outstanding deposits rise to $25.68 billion from $14.95 billion. And the sharpest jump has come from foreign banks, where outstanding FCNRB deposits have surged to $8.97 billion compared with just $603 million earlier. Now remember, the FCNRB swap window will remain open till September 30, while the window for OFCBs and ECBs will continue till December 31st. So the latest number clearly shows that the RBI's special measures have received a strong response from public banks, private banks and even foreign banks for that matter, with FCNRB deposits continue to drive foreign currency inflows into India.
Right now, Indigo shares are up around 4%, while Willie Walsh officially took charge as the airline's CEO today. Investors will be watching how his cost management expertise helps the airline navigate rising lease cost, aircraft delivery delays, elevated crude prices and forex pressures. My colleague Avi joins in with more details on this.
So Interglobe Aviation is buzzing in trade today and is up almost 4% as aviation industry's veteran Mr. Willie Walsh assumes the role of CEO for the company with effect from Monday. He has over 4 decades of experience in this sector and started his career as a pilot before becoming the CEO of the same company in 2001. His most recent responsibility includes serving as the Director General of the International Air Transport Association. So a lot of experience in the given sector. Indigo at this point is expanding its international footprint, strengthening its fleet size and inducting long-haul aircrafts. Mr. Walsh is also known as the aviation sector's most strict cost cutter, something that could prove well for Indigo as it battles a delay in aircraft deliveries, rising lease cost and forex losses because of the weakening rupee. The crude is also working in favor of Indigo as it has fallen from $92.93 per barrel just a few days back to now trading at $84 per barrel. So the induction of a new CEO gives the company a leadership role for the future trajectory of the company, plus the fall in crude prices both is helping Indigo Aviation's rally.
Moving on, Karnataka Chief Minister D.K. Shivkumar has carried out the first major expansion of his government, inducting 20 new ministers into the state cabinet and taking it to its full sanctioned strength of 34 members. In fact, that expansion comes just over 2 months after DKS replaced former Chief Minister Siddaramaiah in the state's top political post. Now, the cabinet expansion, many point out, is aimed at strengthening regional, caste and community representation while filling all vacant ministerial positions. So let's take a look at some of who the new ministers are. There are names like Narendra Swamy, Tangadi, Rudrappa Lamani, K.S. Basavantappa, B. Nagendra, Raghumurthy, Zamir Ahmed Khan, Rizwan Arshad, Santosh Lad, Madhu Bangarappa, Putturanga Shetty, Mankala Vaidya, Ajay Singh, Chaluvaraya Swamy, Shivalinga Gowda, Balakrishna, Gayatri Shantegowda, and many others. Remember, it's an expansion of the A team of the Chief Minister. Alongside this cabinet expansion, the Congress also announced key legislative appointments, with G.S. Patil named Speaker of the Karnataka Assembly, even as A.S. Ponnanna has been named Deputy Speaker, Salem Ahmed named Chairperson of the Legislative Council, and Umashri as Deputy Chairperson. These appointments complete the new government's top political appointments, even as there is a whole lot of consensus towards DKS taking everyone on board in the run-up to not just assembly elections in 2028, but local body elections a whole year prior to that. But there's more political action. In fact, Shibani is going to tell us about how Prashant Kishore is back in the limelight thanks to a bit of a surprise win. Right, Shibani?
Right, absolutely, Jude. Now, this man is known to script history multiple times for the political parties like TMC, AAP, DMK, YSRCP, and he is also credited for PM Modi's successful campaigns in 2014, such as Chai Pe Charcha. Prashant Kishore has now scripted his own victory in Bankipur by-election. Prashant Kishore secured a mega lead of close to 19,000 votes against the BJP rival, ensuring his party Jan Surat secures its first seat in the state of Bihar. With this, Prashant Kishore has in fact defeated BJP in its 3-decade bastion that was vacated after BJP chief Nitin Nabin was elected to Rajya Sabha. Let's listen into what Prashant Kishore said on his win.
जो कुछ भी बेहतरी लाई जा सके वो किया जाएगा। जो लोग चुनाव हार गए हैं उनको भी अपनी ओर से बधाई दे रहे हैं। लोकतंत्र है, चुनाव में हार जीत लगा रहता है, लेकिन बांकीपुर का जो चुनाव था ये चुनाव विधायक बनाने के लिए नहीं बना हुआ था। ये पहले दिन से हम लोग कह रहे थे कि बांकीपुर का चुनाव विधायक चुनने के लिए नहीं है। ये बिहार में भाजपा एनडीए की जो सरकार है उसका जो नेतृत्व है उस पर निर्णय लेने के लिए ये चुनाव हो रहा है।
And with that, it's a wrap on India Tonight from Shibani and myself. Thank you so much for watching, but we'll be back soon with yet another bulletin. So keep staying tuned to ET Now. But for the moment, it's goodbye from us.